Okay, where are we going next? TJ again? No. Wait, this is David. Is David ready to go?
I'm just setting up a go meeting right now.
Oh, we want to pass those around.
Well, we got, they flatten over every once in a while, so we can leave flare-ups and stuff like that. So we have to hand them that.
And if we run into trouble, what I could do is maybe play, he's actually played. You know, I could do it. I can, but he's.
Free?
He's just gonna use his card. Yes. What's that?
The nickel tour.
Oh, the nickel tour. All right. Well, do you learn anything?
It's not, it doesn't look at it as a failure.
Very awesome. I got one.
You try to do this? Or is it because you're doing a business?
That's why they're there.
That was just. We can adjust
One big part of it, for a big community, I can get all the milk I want from the neighbors. So, lawyers get
No, what I did.
I'm growing barley seeding, barley. Pick barley seeds, line up the grade.
Okay, are you ready to go?
I am.
So, is he gonna run it off his?
You think it could be well, ask you I've never met her.
Yeah, Dave, yeah. We'll have to do this over. You log on, you got to see it. Yes. Hey, TJ? No. You can't get a hold of Dave, so you're gonna go first. You start here, don't you? And then we'll come back.
Oh, wait, no, he's on now. It looks like he just logged on.
You just logged on?
I hope he didn't go, leave.
Go on.
you can ride home with me.
Okay, let's take our seats, we'll go ahead, make sure everybody gets one of these. For some reason, it doesn't work with the run cash flow. You want on this one here? Should be on this one here.
Presenter.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Give some people a tour after lunch. Anybody interested in taking a tour? I'll do that after the, you want to go back to the seat here. After the program here.
Hey, we gotta figure out what to do because the background noise from your guys' site makes it hard to hear the questions.
Okay, tell them we passed out the cash flow.
We passed out the cash flow sheets, and I'll try
Okay.
and repeat the question. Does that help?
Yes, if you can repeat it, then what happens is you get feedback when somebody starts a question, then that feedback, and it just in my ears.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Hold on.
What we're going to do here is David's going to go first and go over the cash flows that we laid out in front of you. And then TJ will follow up. The title is Cash Flow Projections for Moving to Alternative Crops and Forage Production. So hopefully we can get Dave going here. The other thing, if anybody's interested in seeing a demo on the manure conditioner on ammonia absorption, we have our cheesehead here from Wisconsin that'll help you out on that. He's pretty good at that. He's, yeah, you got all that smelly cheese over there in Wisconsin. And are we ready to go?
Let me just get this going here.
Just to remind you, we've kind of worked through in your handout is the early order cash discount, and you know we're after February, so it's 3%. So we agreed that we'd put another. If you order any product that has an allowance for early order cash discount, then we'll put another 2% by the end of February. So that'll give you a 5%. Just, you ready to go? Okay.
Hey, John, I gotta go. Okay. All right. These are cash flow projections for moving into an alternative crop and forage. What happened in here is I worked with TJ and we laid out a 3-year crop rotation plan. Now this is something that we did, like just say a producer came to us right now, right at the conference and say, okay, I want to get going. How can I get going on this and what do I need to do? So I laid out a cash flow, said, okay, we're going to give you options A and B, the very first fit. Here's option A. This is oats. Hang on a second here. This is oats. We are looking at, first we want to do is we want to get a complete soil test. Those run about $35 on that. We want to know where your NK, but we also want to know where your sulfur, iron, copper, all those levels are. Then we also, for a baseline, would like to have a soil biology test. This is to get a baseline biology so we kind of know where we're at, what direction we need to go. And then again, we do it now at the start, then we can have something to go back to down the road and see if we're making any progress on there. This is oats. I planted, then we wanted to get the oats treated with the Profit Coat planter box on that for 100 pounds of oats. It's going to run $12.60. We would like to see 100 pounds of elemental sulfur, 150 pounds of soft rock phos, 100 pounds of humates, the 1 to 3 millimeter screen down in the spring. That would be a good base fertility program. Why do we recommend these? It's just basically you have no sulfur in the soil. Your soft rock phosphate is going to bring in all your trace minerals along with some phos and some calcium. And then your humates is going to start to work on cleaning up any chemical residues out there, the biology, and it's the carbon product, so it's also going to spread water out there for you. 100 pounds of oats is going to run you, I said roughly $30 an acre. All prices are just estimates on here, just to kind of see where we came out. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. You can do your own adjustments on here. Herbicide pass, spot spraying preferred. If you get it in there thick enough at the start, you may be able to get past this step of the stage, but I did throw it in there as a conservative figure in case you had to do it. What we did find out last year working with a client of mine, if you do Biomineral 75 and the Cattle Water Ag at 3.2 ounces per acre, the two together, and put it out at 15 gallons, we got a price on that about $18.50 an acre. He did see a good bump in his corn where he done it. We're looking probably about a 10 to 15 bushel bump on there for corn. What I'm thinking is this is going to be a good stimulate for oats, and I think we should see some good mineral getting into that leaf area, into that plant, and cattle water is a good stimulant on there too. We did a conservative harvest crop at 125 bushels an acre. We were using $4 for the milling price. At the time this cash flow was done, that's what we could get. Since then, the price has come down a little bit. Now, the other thing is we are looking into fermenting the straw. I said we could pull 2 tons of straw per acre off there, ferment it. We had a minimum price of $100 a ton. If we do this right, we should be able to maybe get $125 and $150 a ton. This is a secondary source of income off of there. So then, for the cost of the fermentation program, I did put it in at $7.50 a ton, just for rough round figures on that. So now we have got down here, when we get the oats harvested, we pull off the straw, ferment that, then we come back in and plant a cover crop of cereal, rye, tillage, radish, and turnip. That's going to run about $30 an acre. This is getting set up to do corn in year 2. So then I put in your machinery and fuel costs, all of this. I have land cost at $300 an acre, and then crop insurance estimate was in there. Depreciation, interest, miscellaneous, all of that was in there, $23 an acre. So we're still showing a profit here on there, $4,727 an acre. Even if you lowered that price up there, you still should be able to make some money on the oats there. What I'm thinking is, if you get the elemental sulfur, soft rock, and humates out there, this yield could possibly be somewhere in that 150 to 175 bushels an acre on there. So then we're just, even with the lower price of bushels, we're still going to come out ahead on that. Now, as I go through these, when I'm done, TJ is going to step in and explain a few things why we set these programs like this and what we're doing with the cover crops, and what we're trying to accomplish is getting organic matter back into the soil, building that soil diversity, getting your biology stimulated and up and running. This is option A. Option B, we've tried spring wheat, pretty much the same program down there. 80 bushels an acre, that is the Minnesota average for spring wheat. And at the time, I went back out and got $6. That's where that was on the board. Get that from the Minneapolis board, not Chicago. Chicago does not have spring wheat. It has soft winter wheat, and Kansas City is hard red winter wheat, and Minneapolis is the spring wheat markets. So we're still going to straw into the fermentation program, 2 ton an acre there. So this is where we get our income from. Cost of that, plant the cover crop, cereal rye, pretty much same thing as the oats on there. We don't make near as much on this because we don't have the bushels coming from the wheat on there. This is year 2. Now we come in, we do a soil test in there. If we want to be on top of things, we probably would run another biology test on there. Then we come back with our soft rock, elemental sulfur, humates again. This time I cut the humates down to 75 pounds per acre on there. The elemental sulfur I keep at 100 pounds just for the simple reason you don't have any sulfur out in your soils, and you need to get that up there. Laid down 150 pounds of ammonium sulfate. Did the Profico planter box for the seed treatment on there. Planted it at 32,000 an acre, and put in a starter mix, gallons of 10-3-4-0, 2 gallons of NPF. That would come pre-mixed in the toilet, and then the bio-release you would put in their tank at the time of application. We would at least do a quart per acre on that. Lessons learned there. We can do the starter mixes for you. We just can't have the bio-release in with any kind of biology product like NPF. It will grow the biology. Liquid nitrogen, side dress or dribble on, 30 gallons an acre. Probably would want to do 3 quarts of bio-release on it at that time there. Go into harvest. We're looking at 200 bushel corn crop. We should be able to do that. This is the March 2017 Chicago Board of Trade price as of 1/23/15 was $4.30. That's the price I used, and that's where I got my income. We took 1 ton of corn stalks off there. We got another $100 an acre off of that. The reason I left, didn't want to take more off there. Here's a place and time that I felt we could get some more organic matter into the soil, leave some on there. We ferment that to ferment those corn stalks. Then we're looking at a cover crop there of cereal rye or annual grass in August, or a mixture of that. Again, this can be adjusted to what is your goal, what do you want to accomplish with your cover crop program. TJ and the rest of us can help you figure that out. We did crop insurance estimate and depreciation interest, and this comes about $100 an acre. The crop insurance portion of that was $20 an acre. The rest of it was your depreciation, your interest, miscellaneous things thrown in there. Machinery and fuel for the different stages, and then we got land ownership cost or rent in at $300 an acre. We're still making some money, even at these prices. Now, year 3. Well, it's kind of hard to really get a true price on what soybeans are going to be out there. I was able to get 966 on 126 November 17 beans on there. Still want to do your soil test, a biology test, just to check to see where everything's at. Still laid down that the humics, the elemental sulfur, and the phos. Do the prop coat with organic soybean inoculant on there. We've got non-GMO beans, and then a starter mix on there. Bio-release put in at the time of planting. We do 1 pass of the Biomineral 75 on there, and come down. We do not pull anything off of here for a fermentation program, but we do come in and plant a cereal rye, Philly radish, and turnip again on there. This is the one where we do show a loss at this point in time. A couple of things that probably will change is your land cost may change, if you're renting or whatever, that may go down. I do not look for these real prices to stay up there because they just can't with these gas prices the way they are on that. The other thing is the bean price. Even if if you start now and watch that, just, okay, 966 doesn't cover it. So you set a target price. If I'm $7 on board, okay, I sell 60% estimated production at that time, I sell it. For most of your input costs, say this, you leave 3%, 30 to 40% open for a case that goes up. You don't ever want to sell all of them at one time. You sell enough to cover your inputs and a few things like that, and then gradually, what I call the dribbles and drab method. A little dribble here, a little drab there, pretty soon you got your whole crop sold. But what we're doing is we want to market that on a regular basis, but we want to get a good average. Our starting point is kind of where our break even is. We want to at least get some of that out of the way. And then if we know what our break even price is and we're above that, it's not going to hurt to sell 20, 30% at a time or 10% at a time. You're just going to have to sell more of it. But as long as you're making, if you're above your estimated break even, you should be making money. That's how I looked at things going in there. This is the year, like I said, it's 3 years out there at this point in time. So I wasn't too concerned about showing that loss at this point because there's a lot of variables in there. I did show a 65 bushel an acre yield. Now, how I arrived at that is this is after 2 years of cover crops. I'm expecting that yield to be there. I'm hoping it's going to be closer to that 75, 80 bushel mark. That's what will probably make up our difference. Just to get our soils in the right direction, we should have that opportunity to pull bushels out of there on that. Now, with that, I am going to turn it over to TJ, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, David. Yep. Okay, so we'll go through some ideas here on with the cash flows and what we can come back with and do moving forward into an alternative crop and forage production. David did the cash flows. Okay, what is a third crop? Okay, it could be many things. It could be winter, spring cereal grain taken for forage or grain with the straw harvested for fermented product or possibly for bedding or a canning crop. And the reason we're talking about this is how do we implement all this stuff together? David ran through those cash flows and showed, hey, okay, if we want to raise oats, we wanted to raise wheat. We did different things in those cash flows. We added cover crops to them. We're really trying to show that we implement this together. We're not going to go backwards. Now, the one cash flow he did show 3 years out, which he's very right. How do you pick a price out in 3 years and show profitability? But we're hoping with putting the system in, we're going to get better yields or more stable yields and be able to cash flow that a little bit better. All right, why would I do this? Well, number one, soil health. We've been talking for 2 days now about cover crops. We've been talking about biology. The part that drives the bus on that is soil health. Why is the other reason I'm going to do it? I want added income. I need to diverse out. Corn and soybeans right now are not the most profitable thing to look at, so we need to start adding something else into our cropping system. Possible manure application at off-peak times. Why I bring that up is, once again, we talked about custom applicators like Doug Rolick. Would love to probably have somebody call him in July and August and say, hey, I got 500-600 acres of manure that I'm getting from so-and-so. Do you want to haul it? Instead of waiting until October 15th and calling Doug and say, I got 500-600 acres worth, you got to haul it. Because then he's like, well, I'm backed up. I got this guy, and this guy. So you would definitely like to see the off-peak time. Plus, with doing that, you're getting some soil biology. If you're going to go back into after like an oats or wheat or something of that nature and you put on manure, it's going to help with your cover crop that you put on, because now you got moisture, now you got some soil biology, you got some microbes working, and you got some nutrients there. So that's actually gonna help that crop, because remember, I talked about it earlier and I'll talk about it again. It's a cover crop. Remember that, it's still a crop. Everybody treats that thing as it's just a pile of junk. It's kind of like that, and you know, probably everybody has it, that cousin that you talk to at the weddings around the corner where nobody sees you because he's that third wheel that you really don't want there, but he's still your cousin. You still should be, you know, taking care of him a little bit. So that's part of doing this is it's still a crop. So you want to feed it, you want to nurture it, you want to manage it, you want to make it grow because it's going to benefit your next crop down the road. Helps with biodiversity. Biodiversity is huge in this industry. We need more microbes. Ken talked about it. Microbes, mineralization, farming deeper, not wider. You know, Dave Robinson talks about it all the time. There's a lot of nutrients and micros and stuff farther down in the soil profile that we never even get to because our roots go sideways, not down. Okay, if it's a grain crop, do we harvest the straw? Always harvest the straw. And here's a couple reasons why. Earthworms don't like straw. Jill Clapperton, a researcher out of Washington who runs a farm out there, and she does a lot of research. She runs a company called Rhizophere Incorporated, has done multiple research. She has told everybody she has found the way to recycle all the plastic bottles in the US. She cuts them in half, she stuffs them full of dirt, puts straw in there with them, puts in cover crop residue, and puts earthworms in there. The thing she's found out is earthworms don't like straw. They're not a fan. The soil doesn't like the straw as much as you think either. I've had a couple producers come up to me over the last year and say, well, I'm going to put in spring wheat or winter rye, and I'm going to leave the straw because it's going to build me organic matter faster. Yes, you're partially right. But it's such a high to carbon and nitrogen ratio that it takes so long to break it down that you're not getting the effects. If you harvest the straw, cashed it in, and put a cover crop in that's biodiverse, and you're going to have a carbon nitrogen ratio of 20 to 1 or 30 to 1 versus a 70, 80, 90 to 1. So that's better for your soil. So harvesting the straw, absolutely. What are some uses for it? Well, bedding. I have many dairy accounts that are constantly looking for bedding. They're always looking for bedding. Feed. There are many dairies that just put it in their TMR rations. It's as long as it's done right, they will buy it that way. Low potassium, there's certain criteria they have, but they will buy it. The third one is our wrap forage with our fermentation product on it. And we've seen some of the samples up here that Ken sent and what we got going here. I think we've got kind of a new technology here with this pre-digested forage that could really go forwards for this dairy industry in the feedlots. I have a client north of Mankato, Minnesota, and we actually have two clients up there that harvest probably close to 700 acres of corn stalks between the two farms, and they haul it down to Hill, Minnesota. And if you don't know where Hill, Minnesota is, I'll give you an analogy. If you're looking south, you're looking into Iowa, and if you're looking west, you're looking into South Dakota. I mean, it's way down in the tip. And they haul all their corn stalks down there to a feedlot. So I was up seeing them a couple years ago, and I said, gosh, that's, you know, you're taking all your organic. Well, they're hooked up with a large dairy around St. Peter, so they're getting manure back. So they don't feel they're losing anything, but they kind of are and they kind of aren't. So they're making money off it. Well, if they would implement a system like this and put this through their acres, they could harvest straw and sell it to that feedlot as a fermented product and come out just as good as if they were sitting there constantly taking their corn stalks and hauling it down there. Plus, you'd have a heavier wrap bale that'd have a heavier load with less bales on it. They wouldn't have as much trucking involved, and the feedlot would get more benefit out of it. We could also go up there and wrap their corn stalks and put our fermentation product on it, and that's a conversation I'm going to have with them. Okay, why harvest the straw? I covered this already. It's a very high carbon and nitrogen ratio. Earthworm's not a fan, and there's possible profit center there. And once again, I talked in the videos like with Brad and I. Stuff's getting tight right now. Every extra nickel you can squeeze out of this without doing damage to your next crop or damage to your soil, your bankers are going to like it. Use bioaugmentated manure. See, Jim, I told you I'd get to it sooner or later. Using ProfitCorp Manure Master products are an excellent source, and here's why. Bacteria works in the manure, and then when David struck on too, when it's applied to the soil, they go right to work in the soil. So now you've taken manure out of the pit, they've started to pre-digest that manure, you put it on your ground, and now it's working in your soil too. That's a win-win. That's two products in one that we're applying here. Can swiftly build organic matter. organic matter is huge. And I mean, a lot of our farms are very, very low in organic matter because of kind of the part of the stuff we've done over the course of the years. We need to build that back up. For every % of organic matter we build in our soil profile in the first 6 inches holds water. If you can get up to a 4 and 5 organic matter level, you can hold an 8 to 9 inch rain in an hour. So how many people here in the last year have had a gully washing rain like that, where we've had 3-4 inches of rain in an hour? Just about everybody. Everybody has. Well, what happened to a lot of it? It ran off. Well, if you'd had higher organic matter and a better soil profile, it went in, not off. Well, going in means it's there to be stored for your roots and your corn or your plants. Running off to the stream ends up being a problem, like down in Des Moines where they're suing counties up the stream. Part of that is coming out of tile lines, part is just coming off surface runoff. You're saying to yourself, what is this mess here? This is Paja, oats, and Berseem clover. The other part of this is that using these cover crops can also be a profit center for you as a producer. What are forage cover crops and what are some of the mixes? That was one of them right there. Oats, Paja, Berseem clover. Another one would be Sudan grass, Paja clover, oats, turnips, clover, triticale peas, barley, turnips, forage, rape, and clover. Okay, so what in the world is Paja? Paja is, if you go back, this picture, this was taken by Bloom Prairie, Minnesota, where I live. This is a preventative plant year. This is one of the farms that Brad and Dale Ramsey, another good friend of mine that farms up there, ended up putting this in for preventative plants. So we didn't have to worry about seed bolting from radishes. What Paja is, it gives a smaller tuber, more like probably about the size of a beet, but it gives a 36-inch taproot. The other beauty of this is all this top growth here, this is all forage quality. This is the highest forage crop in New Zealand. I have seen Paja samples come in at 330 relative feed value and about 47% protein alone. Well, that's awful rich. You don't want to do that. But mixed in with the oats and the Berseem clover, you can have an excellent forage, get a lot of tonnage, but you're also creating soil health. Earthworms like the tubers, the top part, yeah, you're taking some nitrogen, you're losing a little bit, but you're gaining so much soil activity that you're gaining ground too. This is oats and Berseem clover. This was taken over by Frost, Minnesota on a preventive plant farm in 13. They ended up planting that November 1st. They started cutting it. They had 300 acres and they ended up with about 6.5 ton of forage per acre off from that. The 2 feedlots that bought that were just ecstatic for the quality of it. It wasn't really high relative feed value. It was about 100 to about 110 range. It's about 13-14% protein, but for a feedlot feeding beef cattle or feeding out steers, it worked out ideal. What to do with this product? A couple things to do is cut and wrap it for a forage, mow it and let it lay. If you're just doing it for a cover crop, you mow it and let the soil biology take off. One thing we did find out, guys got awful nervous in the preventive plant years of 13. We're gonna have all this biomass. You know, you go back and you have somebody that has this about the first week of September and they're looking at you going, I'll never get that through a field cultivator next year. What a disaster you created for me. Yeah, the oats had gotten a little bit tall. The carbon to nitrogen ratio and those were going to be a little bit out of whack. That whole system, Brad mowed his 3 times, Dale mowed his once. The next spring, it looked like this table. There was nothing left. It all melted right in the ground. In fact, Brad did a little tillage on some of his and wished he'd never done any tillage on it because there was nothing there. The farm you saw us by Hope, Minnesota, had a mix similar to this on it. When he went into no-till beans into it, it was just bare. There was nothing left. It had all melted away. What about Sudan grass? This is a field by Hope, Minnesota. It was preventative plant. They took it out of preventative plant. They had beef cattle. They put in Sudan grass. They cut it 6 times that year. They got 6 cuttings off it that summer. They ended up with about 8.5 to 9 ton of dry matter off that farm. They fed cattle all winter. The cattle loved this. It was just like candy to them. If you'd have put that in with a little bit of Paja, and I wish I had told them to put some Paja with it and some clover, it would have been just outstanding feed for them. But I didn't because they weren't really quite prepared to go that far yet. This was BMR Sudan grass. Possible uses for this was top source of mycorrhizal fungi. Dennis talked about mycorrhizal fungi. Ken talked about it. Sudan grass is one of the highest producers of that naturally in the soil. So even if you just use it for a cover crop and mow it down and keep it under control, it's still doing such great jobs in the soil. Excellent source of feed, great feed potential for dry or baleage or chopping it. Sudan grass will make dry hay. It's not sorghum Sudan grass, it's Sudan grass. And if you handle it and do it properly, cut it 3 inches high, crimp it well, lay it flat, tether it, come back in within 2 days, you can make dry hay out of it. If you bunch it into a windrow, don't crimp it, you're not gonna make dry hay out of it, you're not gonna be happy. But it does make excellent baleage too. I had a dairy out in South Dakota in 13, had 197 acres of beans hailed off, about the 2nd or 3rd of June. I have never talked to Nick's dad. They're Dutchmen from Michigan. They moved out to South Dakota about 8 years ago and built a dairy. I've dealt with them for 4 years. I've never talked to Nick's dad. I've always dealt with the son, Nick. Called me up and he said, we had 197 acres of beans hailed off. Dad said, you know what, they're paying us. Let's just get out of these beans. It's close to the dairy. Let's make some more forage. So he called me and said, what would you use? I said, well, let's put some BMR Sudan grass, Maxi Gain out there from Legacy, and let's put some Berseem clover. So I shipped it out to them. They planted it on the 9th or 10th of June. 22 days, it was up, it was looking great. 30 days, they were gonna chop it or cut it for the first cutting. They didn't get it cut. They got rain. It got about 3 feet tall. They ended up cutting it. It wasn't as good as we thought it would be. The Berseem clover didn't react as well. It was kind of scraggly. The middle of September, I get a phone call, and I recognize the number. It's from South Dakota. And it's Nick's dad, John, and I've never talked to him before. And all he said to me is, I don't like you. And I thought, well, this is, I've heard this before, so I'm not too worried about that. I said, why? I've never cut something so many times in 1 year and chopped it. He said, my guys are sick of cutting it. My chopper guy's sick of seeing it. They don't want to go back to the same field anymore. We've getting too much forage off it. And I said, you're getting too much forage off it? And he goes, yeah, I bet you've never heard that before. And I said, no, not really. That's kind of a unique call. But he was very happy with it. The Berseem clover, every cutting got more aggressive, more aggressive. The Sudan, they got to the point they were cutting it at about 2.5 to 2 feet tall. And they weren't getting as many tonnage, but they were getting close to 165, 170 relative feed value out of it with the clover. And it's about 18 to 20% protein. So they're getting a better quality feed out of it by cutting it more aggressively. The other thing they did is they followed my protocol. They put 75 pounds or 100 pounds of nitrogen on it planting. They put 50 to 75 pounds of N on every time they cut it, and it made a better quality feed. I don't have it in here, but I do have some slides of feed tests out of Indiana where they did Sudan grass with Berseem clover, and they didn't fertilize it, and they did fertilize it, didn't and did, and it was day to night different in that feed test. Following the protocol and the fertilization that we need to do on this is crucial to getting good quality forage out of this stuff. So what else could have they done? They could have put a brassica with and clover for some diverse cover crop mix and not done anything. Say it's late in the year, you don't want to do anything, put in 10 pounds of Berseem or 10 pounds of Sudan grass, put in a brassica with it, could be radish, could be turnip, could be rape, put in a little bit of clover and you got a diverse mix. Yeah, it's going to get a little tall. You got to manage it. And that's the other thing I talk about this. It's still a crop. It has to be managed. And you're sick and tired of me saying that. I know you are. But you have to manage it just like it's any other crop. You wouldn't just plant a corn crop and walk away and come back in October and say, well, it's time to combine. Why didn't I get anything? Well, some people do that, but you guys wouldn't. So, I mean, it really comes down to managing it properly, and a cover crop has to be managed too. This is annual or cereal rye up by Dundas, Minnesota. This dairy farmer took corn silage off in 2012, dry as all get out. He put in a mix of 2.5 bushels of cereal rye, came back with that same mix. He put in 1 pound or 2 pounds of radish and 10 pounds of crimson clover. This was May 20th. It was up to about my thigh high. He cut that. He got 2.5 round bales per acre, no-tilled beans into it, and the beans did 69 bushels that fall. Never had raised beans like that before. That ground was so mellow underneath, it was unbelievable. He was just happy as all get out. I should click the thing a little faster, shouldn't I? Because I know what I'm doing here. So what are the benefits? What are the use and benefits of cereal rye? Well, for one thing, it's an excellent nitrogen scavenger. He had a lot of manure out there that he wasn't getting all the use out of. He scavenged it back up. Works well with other brassicas and clovers. I really believe in that synergistic effect that I talked about earlier with these cover crops. That rye, I think, did as well as it did. It was dry. He applied 6,000 gallons of cattle manure on that farm before he no-tilled the cover crop mix in. So he had some moisture there, but the radishes took off and rooted deep really fast. And I believe they drew up enough moisture from farther down the profile that they fed the rye and the clover. Everybody worked together well. They all play nice. And he ended up getting a really good cutting off at the next spring. Jeff has worked with me ever since then and is very in love with the system we're working on. The gentleman that does his no-tilling of the beans called me last year and he said, I want to get on this program. I've no-tilled for Jeff for 2 years now, and it's the funnest place. I go in and no-till beans because he said even if you get an inch of rain the next day, you can go no-till beans, and the planter sits up on top of that rye that's been cut, and you just move right along, and it cleans up so nice, and he's getting great yields out of his soybeans coming after that. Can be used for cover crop seed, possibly milling. Makes outstanding feed in the spring. Grain millers buy so much rye. They don't buy a lot of cereal rye, but they do buy some. I think Jesse and Bruce both told us about 100,000 bushels a year. If you belong to their sustainable ag program, it doesn't mean you have to sell anything with them. What it does give you is the option to sell to them. So when they're looking for cereal rye, they'll start making phone calls to their producers that are in this list and say, did you raise cereal rye? Yes, I did. Do you have it? Yeah. Can I buy it? Yeah. So I mean, it kind of gets to be a win-win situation. So that's adding a third crop into it, coming out of soybeans, coming out of a canning crop, coming out of corn silage. Okay, how do I apply a cover crop? Well, if you're coming out of a summer crop like oats, wheat, barley, or whatever it might be, no-till drill after those is really an outstanding way of doing it. I think it works really well. It is a little more expensive sometimes, but you're getting great seed to soil contact, and you can use such a diverse mix at that point. By using the drill, coming out of a canning crop or out of a cereal grain crop, you can apply peas. And I really like peas into these rotations unless you are in a heavy canning crop and peas are in your rotation. Then I'm going to tell you not to, because the phytophthora and root rot and some of the pea diseases can be transferred from a forage pea to a canning pea. We're not sure how much it would affect it, but I don't want a canning company mad at me because they can get pretty vicious pretty fast. So no-till drilling gives you application of using multiple different species. The other thing is an airplane. I'm not a helicopter fan, and here's why. I have nothing against those flyboys. They do a great job. But the one thing they do, they're more expensive than most of the planes we've ever dealt with. The other part is, anytime I've seen a bad job of flying on cover crops, it usually wasn't a helicopter doing it. And I think a lot of it is it gets so much down pressure from the rotors. They're thinking that they're probably doing a better job of getting the seed down. We've seen a lot of windrowing. As that seed hits the ground, they'll start to windrow behind that helicopter. Well, we ran into a gentleman, Jim and I did, down at the farm show in Iowa. He came up, his guy he works for is by Garner, Iowa. He said they used a cover or a helicopter. They went out there to combine beans, and there was windrows of rye out there. The guy basically right away said, well, I'm not doing this again. The guy who's his farm manager told me, he says, well, now wait a minute, maybe it's how we did it. No, I'm not happy with this. So right away, now we've lost somebody in the soil health world. He doesn't want to do it again. Hopefully his farm manager can talk him into calling us. Possible robotics. There are some really interesting, neat robotic units out there right now that are running around. They're seeding cover crops. You fill them up and turn them loose. They go up and down the rows. They throw it out. It's kind of a neat deal. They're a little expensive right now. They're kind of sensitive to rolling terrain. Another possibility, I didn't put it on here, is Hagie and some of these different seeder units or these airflows are starting to put spinner boxes on them or stuff like that, so you can go into standing corn and put it on. I think those will work. The only bad part is the nice part about the plane is you get an inch and a half of rain like we did here, and he went out and seeded and he got a good start on it. If you're going to do anything with machinery, it turns into weather sensitive. You know, if it's rained, you can't go out there right away. Those guys flew right after that rain. Here's a picture up by Medford, Minnesota. That was when I took off the road. Terry landed right out in a hayfield, the neighbor's hayfield, put his windsock up. He says, I can land out here. It's nice and flat. He drove it twice as his pickup. He landed right out there. We filled the seeder or filled the plane there, and he flew it on for us. Terry does a really good job, and he's been very, very price competitive for us. If we can get him within 5-6 miles, he does it for about $11 to $12 an acre, which is very reasonable price. He has a big plane, so he can cover a lot of acres in a flight. The reason the planes charge what they do is they burn 75 gallons of fuel an hour when they're ferrying seed. That's a lot of money. They're burning, and their fuel runs about $5 to $7 a gallon. So they're burning a lot of fuel when they're in the air. Now they're doing a good job and they're making it work. We're actually looking at putting a strip in by Blooming and one by Geneva so we can get these guys closer to where they're flying. The closer you can get, the better off they are. Townships will not let them land on a gravel road. We checked. No, they're not gonna go for that. And they're a little leery on the crown of the road. I thought it'd be kind of neat to have land on the township road, but they weren't too up with it. So what are my third crop options? Canning company crops, sweet corn, peas, possibly green soybeans. There's a couple contracts, SunOpta writes out of Hope, Minnesota. They do some green soybeans. Any of those you can come in behind as long as they're off by the 15th of September. Those are all crops you can come in with a no-till drill, and the gamut is wide open on cover crops we can use there. If you get them off earlier, like Brad did, he went in and did some earlier stuff, did some later plans, and he got a 4-H cutting off it. Once again, we're generating more income to pay for that seed to make yourself some more money. Spring cereal grain, oats, barley, wheat. I like the oats and the barley side of it. Like I said, wheat just in our area, I don't know why it just hasn't been the slam dunk I think it should be. Fall cereal grains, winter cereal rye, winter barley, and a new one would be the winter oats that Bruce was talking about, still in experimental states. I really, really hope they get that winter oats working. I think that'd be an outstanding crop to raise. Be kind of fun to see if we can make that work. Crop insurance. I knew this would come up sooner or later, and I brought it up on my own. Crop insurance availability. As long as you have a history in your county, you can insure it. So I checked with my agent, and I said to him, I said, okay, in Steele County, which is north of here, and just a little to the east, right off Interstate 35, I said, what can we insure up here? Well, I can insure winter cereal rye. I can insure winter barley. I can insure oats. I can insure any wheat, but I could not do the rye. Now, I know there are some counties farther north that you can insure rye. You can take a cutting before you plant a cash crop. As long as you aerial seed something in the fall or drill it, you can take a cutting before you plant soybeans. Now, canning company crops are different. If you're planting sweet corn for Seneca or Birdseye, and you put cereal rye in after soybeans, and you tell them you're going to take a cutting before your sweet corn, you're not going to raise sweet corn for them. They're self-insured. They do their own crop insurance thing, and their crop insurance, whoever they work through, does not believe that that's a benefit to sweet corn. We know it is. I know it can be done. I know there's some real benefit to it. They don't believe in it, and until they do, you're not going to win this one. So don't even think about doing that. But if you're going to plant no-till soybeans, and you can do that at the end of May in this area, you could take a decent cutting off that and wrap it up and ferment it with our product, or just wrap it up in a net wrap and sell it that way. There's a lot of options with either winter barley or winter rye or winter wheat if it works in your area. I'm not a fan. Government programs. Depending on the program and the farm you sign up for, you can plant some of these crops. In my county, I can plant oats, I can plant barley, and still receive my payments and insure it. I checked with my agent. He's very good on the crop insurance side too. He said, yes, as long as it's on our approved list, I could plant oats and still receive my government programs because I'm still raising a grain. If you plant cereal rye, now here was the one catch. If you plant cereal rye, you can still receive the government payment because it's on the list as a grain, but I could not insure it in my county. So you need to check with your crop insurance agents in your county to see how, because every county's got a little quirk. In Steele County, where I'm from, we cannot insure leafy corn. We cannot put crop insurance on leafy corn for our dairies. In Waseca County, which has less dairies than I have, they can insure it. Why? Because they had more dairies when they wrote the program, the first one, than we had in Steele County, and there was more acres of leafy corn being raised there. So it just doesn't make any sense, but that's the way they work it. In Freeborn County, I can insure a leafy corn, and there's one dairy left in Freeborn County, but they can insure it here. We have 27 dairies in Steele County, and I can't insure it up there. So it doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. If you're planting canning company crops, check with your agent. There are some loopholes there too with the agent side too. If you're planting peas, if you're planting late peas, putting something before it, there could be some issues. Any questions? I am out of time. So does anybody have any questions? You guys are just tired of hearing about cover crops, aren't you? I think so. I think you're ready for me to sit down and not talk anymore about this. The one thing I will say before I'm wrapping this up is I really appreciate everybody coming today. I really appreciate everybody being attentive as you have been. I think this has been a great program these last 2 days. We've covered a lot of different stuff. The grain millers being here were outstanding. I really hope we can do a lot of work with them and work with you guys on raising this third crop, implementing this into it, and adding the cover crops to add value added to all this. Thank you. Oh, okay, we got a question. Haha, I knew I'd have one. Can you mix elemental sulfur, sulfate, and humate before it's shipped?
In a rebag, you mean? If we have enough lead time, we probably could. We've got a blender in the back. We've used it primarily to blend in the bulk. But we probably could. It's gotten now, we used to be able to get some blending done at the mines, and they won't do it anymore. Their volumes have just picked up so much. So that's something that could be considered. You know, if you don't have a way to do it on farm. You know, what he's talking about, again, this is something we've been promoting the last 5 years, is the soft rock phosphate. These are what I call your foundational products for building balanced nutrition in the soil. These are all mined ores. And your soft rock phosphate has your phosphorus, but it's also got, like, Dennis, what, 35% calcium? 24% calcium. But it's got all the trace elements in it. All right. Now, believe it or not, this is what they make a lot of the commercial, like the 1034 out of. They pull out the phosphorus and throw everything else away. And the minute you put that in the soil, it binds up again with anything positive and isn't available. So this is a good foundational product. It releases over a 3-year period of time, and you know, going on in the fall. And then you got your SOP, or potassium sulfate. I like this here versus the potassium chloride, just because you get sulfur with it. And again, it's more expensive, but you don't have to put on as much pounds per acre. These can all be banded too. And then you got your elemental sulfur. And there's information in your packet on these under the product descriptions. The question is, can they be blended? Yes. And we can think about doing that for you. If you have a local retailer that could blend it and apply it for you, which they don't like to do, you know, it's usually a losing battle on that. I see that Kenny Jansen left. He brings it in bulk, and he blends it right on farm. He puts it in a shed, and then he loads his, just use a skid loader to kind of blend it together. So there's different ways, and that can be discussed. If you're going to use these products, think ahead, because obviously these got to be shipped in. Most of your local retailers do not handle these products. But every year we've been increasing the tonnage of these products we've been putting out. Dennis, you want to come on up? So we're going to go into the last segment, and I asked Dennis to put together kind of a, we've been talking a lot about third crop, cover crops. We haven't focused other than on David Whitman's cash flow on kind of putting together a program. We do have a Crop Advantage Plus program that we run with some of you. There is a consulting fee that goes with it, but it allows you to write very specific plans for each field that you have. And so this is kind of finish up what we wanted to cover with you. What's that? Now, what are we going to try to do here? is the type of soil that you don't want.
Are you gonna be involved with this, sir?
So just have to correct us, Dennis, if you wanna- Well, Dennis is getting that way. One of the fallacies I see, you know, in our Midwest crop culture is pretty much what we're doing for the most part, is putting plants together. As we get towards the fall, and think about going to harvest soybeans, a lot of farmers go in the local retailer and say, well, what are we gonna do next year? And then the plans put together without a probably a lot, they probably will look at soil tests, but the way they read them is not all that, what I consider accurate. And they focus mainly on the NPK. And they put a plan together that most likely everyone else gets, and they throw it out there, and hoping for the best. And that's kind of how we do it. And so what we're trying to do, and what we've been working on for the last 4 or 5 years, is try to put a definite strategy together by field for crops, so you can understand the dietary needs of that crop going to the seed. Then your job as a grower is to make sure that you satisfy that crop dietary need when it needs it based on a pre-yield goal that you have set that you want to achieve. So that's kind of what Dennis is going to go through with you here. You do this first. All right. Get the mic.
Okay, so as Jim said, we're going to go through different management strategies, input strategies for 2015, and some of the different things that we've talked about, kind of.
You're muted.
I was muted. So I'm going to go through different strategies, crop input strategies for 2015, some of the different things that we've talked about, different crops, and go through what we have are nutrient calculators. We have soil mineral balancer. They're different charts that help us make recommendations and it makes things a lot simpler. And it allows us to show you what we're going after, why we're going after, what we're predicting, not predicting, but recommending. First and foremost, you want to understand the crop that you're growing. You want to think like that plant, whether it be corn, soybeans, wheat, oats. You want to be putting those nutrients out there when that plant needs it. And we'll go into different instances here. For instance, sulfur is needed later in the season. 90% of the sulfur is needed after tasseling for corn. So you don't want to put that on, you don't want to, you want to put it on right away, probably because it takes 6 weeks to break down, say for ammonium sulfate. So you want that sulfur to be available. You don't want to put, say, ammonium sulfate on in the fall because 6 weeks it becomes available. It's not going to do your corn crop any good. And there's some different factors that are affecting crop health. We've talked about Brix level. You want 12 or higher Brix, and Brix simply is the amount of sugar that plant will produce. And the more minerals you have, the higher the Brix. Low or high pH sap. You want that around 6.4. Interesting enough is our body pH, our blood, no, not blood, our urine and saliva pH should be 6.4, just like the plant. So we're very similar. You don't want any soil compaction. You want that, plenty of oxygen in that soil. That's extremely important. You don't, a sleeping biological system, soil in the plant. You don't really want that either. You want to have good biology in that soil. Again, go back to using your seed coating, that type of thing, putting that biology right on that seed so you can get that good biology on that rhizosphere around that root system. Get that plant off to a good start. Vince Wortman always used to say, once a runt, always a runt. And that's very true. I've seen that. Soil biology diversity. We've talked about cover crops. That's how you get a good biology diversity. Getting a third crop into that rotation like we used to 40, 50 years ago. Nutrient levels and balance availability. It's not necessarily about where the nutrients are. It's how everything is balanced. You want to have a balance of your nutrients. You want to have a balance of your biology so that everything works in conjunction.
Do microbes help do that?
Absolutely. Microbes will bring nutrient levels into balance for sure. That's why David Widman was talking about humates. I love humates, and that is one product that's going to bring, it's going to stimulate biology, and that biology is going to start to bring things back into balance. Low energy or ERGs level during seed fill, that's going to cause you to have lighter test weight. It will be the main problem there, and it'll have to do with the maturity as well. If you have low energy levels, that plant's going to shut down. You go, say, south of here on I-35 in middle of August, a lot of times that corn is starting to shut down because there's no energy left in that plant. And it's just basically cannibalizing itself, trying to survive.
Well, on a commercial program, you know, really when you look at putting the material out in the fall, it's going down here, it's growing season, it's going
That's
this
right.
way.
That's right.
What we want that energy being building towards the time we gotta fill it, right?
Right, exactly. What Jim is saying is many farmers will go out there in the fall and they'll put their DAP and their 60 on and their anhydrous on in the fall, and they have this energy level way up here, but by the time the plant needs it, you know, the energy level from that fertilizer is way down here. So there's nothing left for that plant to, there's no energy left for that plant. And it suffers. It suffers in test weight, and it starts to shut down. And it's going to affect yield too. Soil salinity. This is more of a problem in the Dakotas, especially North Dakota. There's a lot more salinity problems up there with salt levels. But in Iowa and Minnesota and Dakotas too, there's a lot of magnesium issues. Wisconsin, there's a lot of magnesium issues all over the place. And that can also be a salinity problem. Magnesium is going to have, they're going to be smaller particles compared to calcium. Think of it like if you have a box and you have a bunch of different ping pongs, that would be magnesium. But if you have a box and you put a bunch of basketballs in there, you're going to have less basketballs in there. You'll have more air movement in between those basketballs because that's a larger particle. That's calcium. The basketball is the calcium and the ping pong is the magnesium. So it all has to do with air movement. And we've talked about that quite a bit today too. So soil nitrate levels, the higher the soil nitrate levels, the more issues you can have with insects, especially. Aphids love soil nitrate and nitrate levels into that plant. And so they're going to affect that plant. Your Brix levels are going to be much lower too when you have higher soil nitrate and higher nitrates in that plant. Soil water management goes back into infiltration, getting that water off the surface, and also percolation, moving that water throughout that profile. And we've talked about the nitrate issues with the Des Moines watershed. That's part of soil water management. Our soils have been depleted of bioactive carbon, so there's nothing to hold nutrients and nothing to hold water and keep things in place. So our nitrates are flowing down into the water supply, into our groundwater, or they're running off the surface. If you have a good biological soil, you have bioactive carbon. That bioactive carbon acts as a magnet. It's going to hold water, it's going to hold nutrients and keep them from running off and to keep them from leaching. Pests, weeds, insects, diseases, all these different things have a major factor. We can manage those on a conventional versus GMO basis. I've got many farmers switching now to conventional corn and conventional soybeans, and we can devise a program for that without a problem. Even if you have rootworm issues, you can put dry insecticide down. Many times guys are putting down dry insecticide and a Smart Stax out there for rootworm control, which makes absolutely no sense, because all you need is the dry insecticide. Nematode issues, that's mainly more of a problem in soybeans. I don't know if TJ touched on this, but the annual rye actually has some cyst nematode suppression too. So
does oats.
So does oats. So there you go. So there's a couple different, if you use your cover crops with oats or annual rye, you have some cyst nematode suppression. And of course, seed selection is a big one. Don't go out there and try to buy the cheapest seed out there. You get what you pay for many times on that aspect.
Look at the trials.
Yep, first trials.
The seed house is an example.
Yep.
But last year, Dennis, what I found was there was a lot of difference between what variety you planted. Some of the varieties that were doing good really fell, I noticed last year.
Yeah, weather's going to make a big difference on that for sure.
Just watch the history of the variety on the farm, because there are some varieties that we work on. I've got 2 different farms, I would look at some of those varieties that look good. What's on one farm,
That's very true. You said what works on one farm may not work on another as far as corn varieties and soybean varieties, or corn hybrids rather than soybean varieties. That's very true. It may work in the first trials, but you need to try it on your farm before you put it on everything. And that's a good point. Crop rotation, of course, is very important versus going in a monoculture. But that goes back into using, say, three crops instead of 2. That'll make a big difference on biodiversity. Gossa's wilt. Ken touched a little bit on this already. Gossa's wilt has become a major problem, especially since we started putting the traits in there. The thing is with GMOs, when you put something into that plant, something else into that plant, you have to take something out. And a lot of times it's disease suppression. And these hybrids cannot handle, Gossa's wilt used to be kind of a wimpy disease, and now it's becoming a major problem because we've taken out the resistance that used to be in those hybrids. We've taken it out to put in the gene. So Gossa's wilt has become a major problem. And what we see more in the Dakotas, Canada, Minnesota, we see these pink, these leaves will turn pink and they'll just shut down. That plant will shut down in about 4 to 5 days once you start to see one symptom. And
the problem is, it's in the seed now.
Exactly, it's in the
And
seed.
you put it in a bin, it'll actually take test weight out the water that's in there.
Right.
And we believe it's in a very high percentage of the seed corn too. And they could run it across the gravity table and probably take it out, but they'd lose over half the seed corn. They won't do it. So none of the seed corn companies want to talk about it.
And Ken was talking that it's affecting germination too.
And we've had several people contact us. Well, this corn tested 98% last fall, and now it's testing 2% on cold germ. Why? So, really, when you're buying seed, a good question to ask, how was this corn raised? Where was it raised? Did they have Gossa's wilt in the area? Has the seed been tested for Gossa's wilt? Or get a cold germ test? Because it can have a major impact on what you buy in the bag. And I don't think the seed companies are being upfront on this whole thing. This disease has just taken off. It used to be a minor little pocket in Nebraska. Now it's all the way from Manitoba to Louisiana.
Yep.
And you'll go out and you think you got in August, the first part of August, you think you'll have, 220 bushel corn crop. And what you'll find out when you harvest is you got 180 or 170, right, Dennis?
That's exactly right. And if you don't dry it down far enough to say at least, 10%, 10 to 12% in the bin, it'll keep working and it'll take your test weight away.
And again, the healthier your soils are and the more health you have on your plant leaf, And there isn't anything, as far as I know, complete corn tolerance to this, a vine or variety
No.
that's completely tolerant.
No,
At best, they're marginally tolerant.
Right.
But you can look at that when you do your seed selection, but the big thing is know if you have it in the area. And if you've got it in the area, then
it's going to be in your field.
consider it in your overall planning, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you can see these fields from miles away. You just look for those pink leaves, it's out there. It's all over.
Jim, is that anything conventional too, or organic as well?
Yes.
Is it all now you're saying?
All corn,
Yep.
Across the board.
across the board. But we feel as though the traded, and we feel that Roundup has really driven this, because again, if you listen to Dr. Hubert and what Albright talked about, all diseases are usually led by a lack of copper, mineral, nutrition, or balance. And you open up the plant to be infected. Because it isn't a strong internal system in the plant.
Manganese and copper, like Ken talked about, are the big ones to suppress the Gossa's wilt and any disease. Alan?
Do you need to see these symptoms in the field for Gossa's wilt to
No. I'd say do you need to see those symptoms in the field to have those issues in the bin? And I'd say no, you still can have them in the bin, especially since if it's already in our seed before we even plant it, it's darn well going to be in that seed, after you harvest it.
It's Clavibacter is a bacteria, and out in Idaho and Utah, Ken and his associate Salam started working on this several years ago. They put the potato in these big warehouses, and in a matter of 2 months, they're all mush. It's rot.
It's ring rot, isn't it?
Yeah, it turns to mush. And so they start working on this, and they come up now with a biological control that they're using, and it's working on the potatoes, and now we're looking at that to bring into the corn side. So we hope to have some stuff out this year on that.
We think we can put it in the seed treatment and then also do a foliar treatment and really prevent that Gossa's wilt from really attacking us.
It's a bacteria, it's not a fungus.
Right. So no fungicide will even touch it. One thing you look for to be specific, because not all, I think it's hybrid sensitive. Certain hybrids in the Minnesota and Dakotas and Canada, they're northern hybrids. This is just a theory of mine, but they turn this pink color. I don't usually see that pink color in Iowa, but I know what you do look for is the black spots. They're like black freckles, and you hold it up to the light and you can see those freckles. That's darn well Gossa's wilt. And you also see kind of a watermark on that plant too, on that leaf. And that's definitely Gossa's wilt.
When does it normally start showing up around here where you can really notice it going down the road?
It's really dependent on environment, depending on what the season is bringing. But it seems like when you have a rain event, really hard rain event, you'll get some splashing, that type of thing. And it can be mid-August. If we can, many times you'll see it almost every single year. And if we can avoid the droughts, it seems like it is triggered by stress. When you have a drought stress, that's when it really kicks in. I remember having a meeting over in Aberdeen, and what was that, 2 years ago? And Ken Iringer from North Dakota said, yeah, we've got Gossa's wilt, I'm pretty sure. And I didn't see it on the way over, but on the way back, it was everywhere. It was in almost every field that had stress. So if you had sand, those fields were really giving up because there was stress from drought, and Gossa's wilt was nailing them. We better keep moving. So for fertility recommendations, what we do is we take a grower profile. We can use the soil mineral balancer to make recs, and then the soil nutrient calculator. I'll go through those a little bit here. Grower, well, I haven't gotten the grower profile. This is a soil test from Midwest Labs. You've got all the different, the biggest thing I want to focus on is you want to make sure that you have, all of your base saturation, all your micronutrients, sulfur, all these types of things. You want to make sure you get all of that on a soil test. So we know what's going on in that field. The co-ops, many times, we pick on these guys a lot, but they try to save money. So they're going to test for, you know, phosphorus, potassium, pH, maybe sulfur. Now sulfur, a lot of people are applying sulfur. So now they're carrying ammonium sulfate. So many times they'll carry, you know, they'll put sulfur on their soil test. But we want a full soil test so we can tell what the heck's going on in that field. The base saturations are real important. I look at that more so than pH many times. Your calcium levels, you want that between 65 and 75%. Magnesium, many times is too high. I've seen magnesium levels up to 35, 40%, calcium levels at 40%. That soil is like concrete. And when it dries out, it turns to cement. You can't get anything to grow in it. And as soon as it stops raining, you're in big trouble. And I've seen many soils like that in the Red River Valley. Yeah, your nitrogen efficiency is horrible because of all that magnesium.
Can't work the soil either.
No. Yeah, yep. The magnesium,
Go into it and you go out with a big ball.
magnesium should be around 15%.
Just a 6-inch sample?
Yeah, this is 6 inches, yep. Potassium levels, I like to see that 2.5 and higher. Even 3% potassium levels would be much better. I've seen levels as low as 1%. That's a very low amount of potassium, and that really can go towards the structure of that plant. They can really struggle. And potassium deficiency, you'll see yellowing on the outer edges of the leaf on corn or soybeans or wheat or anything.
Just pull a good composite sample
Mhm.
representing the field or areas in the field. You don't need a grid soil sample unless you're really going to use that data to variable rate lime or gypsum. Other than that, variable rating P and K, I don't think really has worked out all that great. The thing you want to do is just try to get your biology going and get your base products on there and start building the overall balance. And then the field will start evening out, right?
That's exactly right. And we'll talk about these in a little bit. Soft rock phosphate is a great fertilizer for balancing things out because it's loaded with different nutrients, calcium, phosphorus, all the trace elements. And those trace elements, as you can see here, they're not out there, guys. And actually, this zinc level, these are some of the better zinc levels that I usually see. So I suspect that they put manure on these fields because they're usually not that high. Manganese is always extremely low. And remember, manganese and copper, that's your disease suppression. That's your immune system in that plant. We don't have it. We need to be putting that out there. Soft rock phosphate, need to be putting in foliar on, like Biomineral 75. Even boosting that with foliar micro boost would be a really good idea.
And then, would you put your soft rock phosphate on there in like cold, wet conditions, don't you? You don't, I'm under the understanding that you don't put it on.
In cold, wet conditions, most of the time we'll put it on in the fall. So you have time for it to break down and become available in the spring. That's where we like to do the soft rock, and it works real well in a band.
A lot of times you actually get combined with stuff, and then you don't even have use of it.
All right, I'm not following what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, it gets tied up. I mean, in cold, wet conditions, and then you don't, and it's not doing you any good.
You definitely need the biology with soft rock phosphate. We also recommend using bio-release in the starter when you use soft rock because it will release the soft rock in 3 years versus 5 or more years with regular soft rock. I see what you're saying now. You definitely need the biology, yes. So cold, wet conditions, you won't have as much biology. Agreed.
But if you get it out in the fall, usually by spring, it really helps make it available.
Mm-hmm. You can, this is a pellet, so it is going to work in with, rain and that type of thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you use soft rock phosphate in no-till situations? And yes, you can. The rain will wash it into the soil.
It melts down.
Right, exactly. It'll break down. Yep. This is a color coder. And basically what we did is it takes the regular soil test, and we use green for areas that are in good shape, red that's in bad shape, yellow's kind of in the medium. And you can see magnesium levels are really out of whack, way too high. So again, we have really tight soils. And you can see most of the micronutrients over here are quite low as well. That's where the red's coming in. And here's the grower profile. We just find out all the different information before we go in and make recommendations, what equipment you use, what are your capabilities, so we can devise a program that'll fit your needs. Okay, so mineral balancer, I need to switch now to, I'm gonna wake my computer up here. No, I gotta wake him up, he's sleeping. Put the wrong one up. Okay. Boy. This is the soil mineral balancer. And what we do is we'll take our soil tests. We can enter in all these different things. Your soil, your cation exchange capacity, your pH, organic matter, all these different things. And then it's going to take and show us toward the bottom here where those levels should be and how low we are. So it gives us an overall visual, if you will, of where we need to be and where we're at to start with. Like you can see here, you can tell that magnesium is at 133%, so it's way too high, which is very typical with many of our soils. And our micronutrients are all extremely low. Phosphorus levels are very low. Sulfur levels are low. This is very typical. Now, this level right here is where you would have an ideal soil, a perfect soil. That's not going to happen. It's something to shoot for, but it's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen overnight. Now, when you get, as you start to introduce your biology in there, your cover crops in there, your biology is the best way to bring these soils into balance. And starting to use soft rock phosphate, potassium sulfate, some of these better fertilizers that are loaded with other nutrients are going to start to bring these things back in balance too. But you're not going to do it without biology, for sure. Okay. Now,
When I hand it out, it just, it doesn't follow what he's got up here, but it gives you, a view, and you can take that home.
This is a high salt.
Yeah.
I sodium.
many of our soils are like that, especially in the Red River Valley. There's very high salt levels, high magnesium, high sodium levels, and they're really tough to work with. Okay, now here is the corn nutrient calculator. So you take and you put your number up here. What is your realistic goal? What do you want to raise? So we put in 200 bushel. And then we enter in our organic matter, our nitrogen credit, say it was soybeans. And if you take your yield from last year, say it was 50 bushel, take that number times 0.75, that's going to be the number you put in there for your nitrogen credits. And then your nitrate levels, that's right from the soil test. And then it'll produce, over here, it'll tell us exactly what we need to put on. We need to put on 133 bushel of 133 pounds of nitrogen to get 200 bushel corn. And so it'll take and factor in, we need to start with 267 pounds of N, and then we will get 86 pounds from nitrogen, or from organic matter, 37 pounds again from the nitrogen credit, 20 pounds from from the soil nitrate, and then this takes 10 pounds away from depletion, and you'll have a total of 133. And then over here, we actually have pretty good phosphate levels on this test. Oh, I know why. This is Bill. He was here. I've been working with him for a number of years. So we're building things up. We've got 30 parts per million phosphorus, which isn't too bad. Now, if you take your parts per million from your soil test, your phosphorus level from your soil test, parts per million converted to pounds per acre, you multiply that by 2 to get pounds per acre. So that's where this 60 is coming from. So we took 30 parts per million times 2 to get 60 pounds per acre. And then we have over here, this will tell us what we need. We need 60 pounds of actual P2O5 or phosphorus fertilizer to produce 200 bushel corn.
Dennis, would you take and put that 133 pounds of nitrogen all at one time, or would you put it on in increments?
Depends on the situation. Now, if your CEC is high, which it is, they have a high CEC of 32, you can put it on all at once. Now with Bill, we usually side dress, and I do like to side dress, so you kind of spoon feed that crop more of when that crop needs it. Let's see, is it on this chart? Darn it. Okay, I'll get to that in a second here. Then we enter in our potassium, our CEC first of all, and then we enter in our potassium, again, taking the parts per million times 2 to get our pounds per acre, and it tells us we have way, excessive amounts of potassium, so we don't need to apply any more there.
And the reason why you put cation exchange in there is because the higher the number, the more you got to satisfy to have available to the plant.
Right. Your cation exchange capacity is like a big pantry, and it's full of these negative charges. You have negative charges, you have positive charges. Your anions are negative, and the pantry is full of negative charges. Those negative charges are going to marry up with positive charges. and the more negative charges you have, the more positive charges you can have, and the higher your CEC. So those negative charges are going to be attracted to, say, calcium and magnesium, which are both 2+ charges. So the 2+, that means there's 2 charges on calcium and 2 charges on magnesium, and then you have potassium has 1 charge. So your calcium and your magnesium are going to take those negative charges up first before the potassium. So in instances where you have a lot of calcium and a lot of magnesium, many times your potassium is kind of the left out in the cold, and you don't have enough negative charges for that potassium to marry up, and your plant will suffer. You won't have enough potassium. And I see that up on those horseradish fields I was telling you about. It's very unique soil up there. They have 50 to 75% organic matter up there. It's peat moss is what it is. And they're old lake beds, and the potassium availability is pathetic. It's 1% at the most. And we've been trying to raise it. There's so much calcium, there's so much magnesium already in the soil that there's no room for the potassium. So we're trying to move that up with biology and with applying potassium sulfate, but it's a slow progress.
Dennis, why don't you put on potassium foliar feeding? That's exactly what I do to raise the potassium level. Is I foliar feed it.
That's a good idea.
Feed it many times.
Yep. Your comment was, why don't we foliar feed the potassium on those situations? And that's a good idea. I'm going to have to look into that. That's a really good idea. And then we enter in our sulfur down here, again in pounds per acre, and it tells us how much sulfur we need to apply. For 200 bushel corn, we need to put on 100 pounds of sulfur. Your co-op is not going to tell you to do that. They're going to say, all you need is 15 pounds of sulfur. That's all they're going to tell you. I know, I used to work in a co-op. Uh-oh.
Is it plugged in your computer?
It's back.
Okay.
It's just sleeping, it's tired.
What if you had all that potassium? What if you got very low?
We can change level here. Let's see. One more time on that? I couldn't hear you.
If you had, say, 1.5% potassium level,
Okay, so then we'd be looking at, say, say 250 pounds. That would be more like it. Then we would be wanting around, say, 59 pounds of potassium, of actual potassium. That's not of actual product. So then you would take your potassium sulfate, you take that 59 and divide it by 0.50, because there's 50 pounds of potassium, 50% potassium in potassium sulfate to get your actual number.
Talk a little bit about Soluplex there.
Good question. Why do you use potassium sulfate over potassium chloride? Potassium chloride is extremely hard on the biology. If you're going to use potassium chloride, you'd want to put it on in the fall for sure, so you can get some of that chloride out. But the chloride it's like putting chlorine bleach out on your soil. It's that hard on that soil biology. I was trying to think of the book that I was reading. I think it was The Biological Farmer, something like that. They compared taking 100 pounds of OO60 and putting that out there to 100 gallons of bleach per acre, and what you do to your soil biology by using that product. It's a very salty material. It's 100 and, what's the salt index of OO60? Yeah, OO60 has a salt index of 116, and potassium sulfate, I think it's like 45, something like that. So there's about 4 times the amount of salt in OO60 versus potassium sulfate. Plus, you're getting the sulfur from the potassium sulfate. So it's a much more available form of potassium, and there's an energy. If you take potassium and sulfur, potassium is more for growth. It's a nutrient for promoting growth. Sulfur is more for promoting reproduction. So when you have two different nutrients that are doing different things, they release energy. With potassium and chloride, they're both for growth. You don't have the explosion of energy. So there's 5 times the amount of energy in potassium sulfate than there is in potassium chloride, just because of how it's made.
chlorine is killing the biology too.
Absolutely. Chlorine is killing the biology, was his statement. Okay, if we go down further, we're still on the corn crop calculator here. What it shows is we've got weeks throughout the season, and then we've got the crop growth stages up here. And it shows the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur's down a little bit further, that is needed per week. And the percent and the pounds that are needed per week. So nitrogen, for instance, is needed in week 6, which would be around V10. That means 10 leaf collars is how you would describe that. Okay, so between V10 and up to, say, R1, there's an extreme amount of nitrogen needed right there. And that's going to be the case kind of for phosphorus and for potassium as well. That's a very critical area, that V10 to R1, that's very critical area for all your major nutrients, your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
And that's where you're producing the most nutrients too.
Exactly.
Go back one slide. I want to show them on the bio-release.
Oh, the side,
If you look
okay.
at potassium there, you notice, point it. Right
Yep. What it's showing here is 84 pounds of potassium are available when you use Soluplex or BioRelease. BioRelease is a biological, it's a biological stimulant, but it's also a solubilizer, and it's real aggressive at solubilizing potassium that's already in your soil that may not be available. And so the biology is what's solubilizing and making that potassium available. So you're getting 84 extra pounds of potassium just by using BioRelease. So without that BioRelease, you'd be at 13. basically 143 pounds of potassium is what you would need without the biorelease. So that's a big difference between 59 and 153 pounds of potassium.
And was that broadcast, or was that, starter?
That's broadcast.
About release would be with the starter probably, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the biorelease is in the starter. Is that what you meant, or? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's definitely a better place to put it, is in the starter, because it's more efficient, closer to where the root system is.
And there's some really good
Thanks.
information, if you're interested on that, over here somewhere. We got it, I believe, right over there, showing a lot of that, if you're interested.
Could get over it. Yeah, I noticed that.
We won't cover all of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna just skip ahead. Okay, now I need to switch back to the,
Yeah, but do you want to show them, are you going to show them the opposite side of the bell-shaped curve, or have you got that in? You know what I'm
well, it
talking
should
about?
be in the chart. Which one do you mean?
Well, we just got down the corner.
Well, I mean, I had soybeans, I had oats, I had all kinds of stuff in there. But I don't know if we have enough time for that.
No, but how about the corn one, when you show them, you know, the backside, it shows the bell-shaped curve, and what's in the soil, and what you got to make up?
Oh, that's in the soil mineral balancer. Yep,
No,
yeah, it
it's
is.
in the calculator.
No, I think it's down here, isn't it? The base saturation,
That's what you're talking about.
is it down further? Yeah,
There.
okay.
Now, like we showed you on the handout there, in the back side of that, he showed you the front. Then what it actually does, as you can see here, for each of the NPK sulfur, it gives you a bell-shaped curve, and it shows you in the green what you have available by week, and the red is what you gotta make up. So now with this plan, you have a definite plan of action as a grower, that if you follow it and meet these demands of this crop, your likelihood of achieving that yield goes way up. Instead of throwing stuff out there, hoping for the best. Now, it took 12 months to put these flow sheets together. This is a lot of work that was done by Ken Hamilton, using Dr. Albrecht's work out of Missouri. So, it's taking the guesswork out of it.
The red, like Jim was saying, is the amount that we need to make up, and the green levels is what's available.
So
So,
when he fills out that grower profile, it lets him know what you're capable of doing and how he might manage that with you. Do you use, broadcast? Do you fan? Do you starter? Do you side dress? Do you foliar? And then we would look at the type of materials we need to be released over a certain period of time to meet that demand.
exactly.
And then by building organic matter, bioactive carbon, biology, we're going to have better balance and availability. We're going to harvest what's already in the soil over
Yep.
time. So it should get better every time we go around the circle.
Absolutely, and if you add cover crops into it, the whole mix, that'll just accelerate things that much faster.
What's that?
No, you don't. There's a lot of detriments to anhydrous. Anhydrous, oh, I always forget that. Anhydrous is what he was saying. You don't want to use anhydrous, and that's very true. Anhydrous is hard on the soil. It's hard on the carbon in the soil. Anytime you put nitrogen out there, whether it be liquid or dry, it's hard on the soil because it actually eats up some of that bioactive carbon. But anhydrous is that much worse because it's looking for hydrogen to satisfy it. It starts out as NH3, and it's looking for one more hydrogen to satisfy it to make it NH4. And the easiest place to find hydrogen, of course, is where there's water. Where's the most water is in your organic matter. So it's going to find that hydrogen from your organic matter and take away that that organic matter and deplete it. But also calcium. It will take calcium out of your soil too. If you look at people that are on methamphetamines, they have black teeth. That's because it's taken the calcium out of their teeth. Oh, where am I here?
You'll normally notice with anhydrous over a period of time, it'll start tightening soils up. When organic matter breaks down, it breaks down at a ratio of 10.4 carbon to 1 nitrogen. When you go out and add synthetic nitrogen, what happens is you stimulate the bacteria because they're at a 5 to 1. Remember Ken talked about that? Well, then to get carbon, they go after the organic matter. So over time, you start breaking that bioactive carbon down and your soils lose resiliency. So the more we can harvest carbon from the air with symbiotic or non-symbiotic microbes, and the better our bioactive carbon. Dennis, what is it? For every 1% organic matter, we hold how much available nitrogen every year? It's about 20 to 30 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So
That's right.
if you got a 3% organic matter soil, you should release 60 to 90 pounds of nitrogen somewhere in there annually. So, okay.
We need to switch to this
Okay.
one now. Okay, so some of the different dry fertilizer products that we've been talking about are soft rock phosphate. We've kind of talked about that quite a bit. It's got 24% calcium. That's got 31 calcium. That's not right. It's 24% calcium and 16% phosphorus. Potassium sulfate is another one we've been talking about, the OO50 and 18 sulfur. Ammonium sulfate, I like to blend that in for an additional amount of sulfur. We put that on in the spring. Remember, it takes 6 weeks to break down to become available. So we have that sulfur available later in the season when you need it during reproduction. Elemental sulfur is a product you use for magnesium, high sodium, and also if you have low sulfur levels in your soil, you want to use elemental sulfur, but only in the fall because it takes a long time. It's a slow release product. It takes about 5 years to break down. So you want to use that more in the fall. Pelletized lime, pelletized gypsum, you can put these in with it to help boost your calcium levels. Gypsum helps with flocculating your soil and reducing magnesium, reducing sodium.
But ammonium sulfate is just a good product, liquid or dry. And to get your nitrogen there and your sulfur, right?
Your liquid form of ammonium sulfate would be ammonium thiosulfate, which is a 120026 sulfur, and you put that in with your 28 or 32. It'll help stabilize it. It works as a urease inhibitor, meaning it basically helps with your nitrogen efficiency and slows the nitrification process down. So yes, that is both liquid and dry. There's different formulations. Some of the same type of things we were talking about here.
And some of this information on these products are in your handout under the product bio list that it has information on some of the product technology there.
Right. So we're going to skip over that. I'm going to go through a couple of these just real quick because we got like 2 minutes. So now if we take and put everything together, we're going to come up with a plan for you. First and foremost, you want to have a good soil sample to start with, complete analysis, base saturation, micronutrients. We talked about that already. Crop residue breakdown. Many guys skip this part of it because they say it's too expensive. You don't have enough time. I've heard a lot of the different excuses, if you will. Now, if you put a cover crop out there, you're going to stimulate your biology, and that's going to help you break down some of that residue too.
Especially if you put out nitrogen scavengers and build your N levels.
Absolutely. So we would take and make fertilizer recommendations based on what you got in your soil and on the soil test and the soft rock and the elemental sulfur. Humates, I like the humates because it's a long chain carbon. It's a long chain carbon so that carbon is a great stimulator of biology, but it also acts as a chelator. It will chelate all your different chemicals in your soil. The main one I'm thinking about is Roundup, of course. We've got all this Roundup in our soil. Remember, Roundup has a half-life of 22.5 years. That means half of it breaks down in 22.5 years. And then another half of that half breaks down in 22.5 years. You can see how long we're going to have Roundup in our soils. But with humates, if we can put them out there, say to 100 pounds per acre per year, we can help start to chelate those different chemical residues out there and start to break them down as well as stimulate the biology in our soils. And we talked about the potassium sulfate. You want to put that on in the spring. Again, would definitely be preferable unless you're going to put it in a strip. You can put it on in the fall, but I would definitely prefer to put it on in the spring because you have that sulfur become available later on. Kind of hit this already with the potassium sulfate in the spring and ammonium sulfate. Want to put that on in the spring. You can put urea on, the humates again. And then with your pre-emergence herbicide, I like to put 28 or 32 on. Always put a pre-emergence herbicide on corn and soybeans. That is easy money in my opinion. You have a weed out there that's 3-4 inches tall, and if you're on a Roundup program, Roundup only program, I've seen it time and time again. These cornfields just look like, they look like crap. I'm gonna be honest. If they have this grass out there, you can tell which program, which fields have pre-emergence herbicide on them and which ones are only Roundup. If it starts to rain, you can't get in there with the Roundup and this grass comes up, the corn is stunted, that's affecting yield. And the guys that have the pre on there, they're okay in a rain, rain event. So they don't have to get out there with the Roundup. Again, we talked about the seed coating. Definitely get some type of seed coating on there, get that biology around that seed. That's the most efficient way to put biology on your seed. It's a no-brainer, it really is. And it's inexpensive. It's around $504, $506 per acre. For the Profitco PB, you can do it right on farm, very convenient. Starter, I like starter. Even though you put a seed coating on, you still should put a starter on. It's a very efficient way to put phosphorus down in there. Again, you want to get that plant as healthy as possible. That root needs especially phosphorus, and it needs to be in an available form. So what we like to do is put some type of phosphorus, whether it be 1034 or 918-9, 624-6, any of those types of things. You want to put BioRelease in it because what BioRelease is going to do is going to prevent the tie-up. What it does is it'll take any nutrient, whether it be a positive or negative, and keep it neutral. So it will prevent the tie-up. Remember, unlike charges will attract. So negatives and positives will attract each other. So when you create something that's neutral, they can't tie up. So if you have a phosphorus molecule that's 3 negative charges and you have a calcium molecule that's 2 plus charges, those two are going to come together and attract each other. And all of your soils have calcium, all kinds of free calcium and free magnesium in our soils. That phosphorus molecule is going to marry up with that calcium and that magnesium and tie up. So the BioRelease prevents that from happening, plus it's a great biological. Molly.
I should mention here that this is not an organic program we're talking about.
Right.
It's a conventional. So organic people would do obviously some other strategies.
Yep. The organic people would be doing some different things. Dry fish might be one of them. That's a great product. You just mix up what you need at the time, so you don't have to have liquid fish. Liquid fish many times will kind of go out of condition, if you will, and start to really become stinky. But the dry fish, you just mix up what you want and away you go. Go to the field. I've got conventional farmers that are using dry fish. It's a great product. A lot of amino acids in the dry fish, a lot of enzymes, vitamins, minerals, all that good stuff. Great biology product. Molly, we've talked about Molly. It basically helps your nitrogen become more efficient. And it's inexpensive. It's around $2 an acre. You don't want to exceed 6 ounces per acre per year. Micronutrient mix, you can put that in there with your starter too. It's a blend of different micronutrients, each individually chelated. Side dressing, definitely like the side dress because again, that plant wants the nitrogen more mid-season versus putting it all up front. Now some guys have to put it all up front. I understand that. They don't have the capabilities of side dressing. So we have to do the best we can based on what you can do. But you can also blend in some phosphorus, some potassium, and Molly in that side dress as well. So you have kind of a blend. And foliars, definitely like to foliar. Many times we can include in the foliar inside of your post-herbicide program, just put the foliars with it. Biomineral 75, it's 75 different minerals. It's a mineral powder and it's the mineral solubilizer that goes with it. You mix the two up and you have a real nice foliar product. Foliar microboost can be added too, so you can get an additional amount of micronutrients. And then with Roundup or Liberty programs, we'd use Herbalite Plus, which is Herbalite is a high energy carbohydrate mixture that really helps, it makes Roundup work better. We can kill weeds much better than AMS type of program any day of the week. And then we add the micronutrients in it because Roundup is a chelator, and it'll chelate those micronutrients and make them, render them unavailable. So you put the micronutrients in with the Herbalite, you have a real nice package. I'm out of time.
Finish the corn up.
Um,
Go back and do the foliar.
Yeah, I did the foliar there. And another foliar, you can put it on V8 to V10. We talked about this stage being very important. So that's why V8, V10 is in there.
Just talk just a little bit, and we'll close it out on the BioMin 75, because we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that. And
Well, I did hit that already.
the foliar?
Yeah.
The BioMin, okay.
Well, one unique thing with BioMineral 75 versus other foliar products is it's small enough so it can get into that leaf, which is really important. The BioMineral 75 has that solubilizer, and what that solubilizer will do, it will shrink it down so it's small enough to get into that leaf. That leaf, it needs to be, what is it, around 400 to 500 atoms to get into that leaf. And most of your foliars are much larger than that. It's like a basketball going through a screen door. It's that type of analogy.
So what we do is we micronize it, and then we use 10 pounds of this per pound and 10 gallons of this. And what it does, it pulls the nutrient in solution. And there's biology in there too. And then you spray that on your leaf. It's great on any forage, cover crop or forage or crop, and it lights it up. And David Whitman also put some cattle water with it for one grower this last year, and they had about a 9 to 10 bushel response on doing that. So it's another way to get minerals into the program. So
I'm skipping way ahead here. This gentleman in Kelowna, Iowa, raised 225 bushel corn, organic corn. And at $12.50 per bushel at the time, that's $2,812.50 per acre gross. So if you can raise organic corn, that's quite a profit in there. Not going to make that on conventional corn for sure.
and the concept behind that, and I know there's organic growers in here, but I believe, where did we have that, Dennis? Is that the next one? Transitioning?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to there, right there. It, had some questions about transitioning into organic. This is a good way to do it. You plant oats and alfalfa, and you take the oats off, but you want to take and put some humates in front again for that chelating part of it, so we can eliminate some of the Roundup that's already in our soils. It'll help chelate a lot of those chemical residues. And don't skimp on the alfalfa. I think TJ might agree with me on this. Probably about 18 pounds of alfalfa per acre, so that you have a good cover of alfalfa, because if you're transitioning into organic, you have 3 years that you cannot use any pesticides and anything that is not approved for organic. But you can see on if you can get to organic corn at $12.50 a bushel versus, back home it's about $3.31. That's about all we can get for corn. That's a huge difference. You want to take and put soft rock phosphate on because of all the different trace elements, a good form of phosphorus, and of course it is organically approved. Elemental sulfur is also organically approved, so we can get our sulfur out there. And so you want to take and harvest the oats off, take the straw off, and use the forage fermentation program. And you should be able to get 1 to 2 cuttings off that first year, and then we want to follow our alfalfa recommendations and the forage fermentation for all that alfalfa for future years. And again, in the following fall, you want to put on 100 pounds per acre of humates, keep that program going, and then each fall put that 100 pounds of humates on, so we can get those chemicals out of that soil. And don't forget the soil test. That's it.
Well, thank you, Dennis. The bottom line is, got a plan. You're not out wandering around. Every one of our agronomists can help you with this plan if you ask. If you're interested in, you know, the cover crops and a lot of that, TJ's here full time with us, and he can help you put together a great cover crop and third crop plan, along with the consultants that you're working with. So if you need help, you know, on the manure side of things, or you need help with forage fermentation or your cropping program or your seed coating or any of your plant nutrients, we're here to help you. We carry a pretty full line in the organic and conventional area. Most all of our conventional stuff is the same as what we use in the organic side. There's a few exceptions like Herbalife, Herbalife Plus. But with that, I want to thank you for coming. We just really appreciate your business and you being here, and we thank those that are online, that are live, and David's group up there, River Falls, for being with us. So spring's going to come fast, so again, we'll be in touch with you, or call if you need help. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I did that.
And you know, the yeast zone is different than the